Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host, Maqbool, with you at B2B World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look, of course, at the very important aspect with reference to the 5th of February. That is, of course, Kashmir Solidarity Day. And this is very, very important for Pakistan, who has been extending its moral, diplomatic and political support through the just struggle of the people of Kashmir towards the right to self-determination. And very, very integral also in terms of the decades-long suffering that the people of Kashmir have had to bear at the hands of the Indian illegally occupying forces. And while, of course, that continues, we've seen that a number of steps have been taken along the way, including draconian laws, demographic changes, and then, of course, the unilateral actions of 2019, all in violation of UN Security Council resolutions and, of course, the special status of the occupied valley. This is important not just in terms of Pakistan's perspective to the situation and our own ties with India, but, of course, also in terms of how the international community must take a look at the issue as a place where there is conflict, where there is disputed territory, where there is, of course, a number of people, generations of people who have suffered at the hands of these occupying forces and, of course, who want to go ahead with their own right of self-determination and choose their own future and their own destiny as should anybody else. So this is, of course, really important in terms of what needs to be done when we talk about Kashmir Solidarity Day and when we talk about this particular struggle. What else can we do to make sure that whatever happens in the international community, they're cognizant of what is going on in the occupied valley, and that political interests or geopolitical interests of different countries don't come in the way, and that India does not continue to go ahead without any consequences in terms of any actions that it takes in the occupied valley. At the same time, we're also going to be taking a look at what that means in terms of Pakistan-India relations, and specifically the kind of baseless allegations that have been put forward by Indian elements with regards to Pakistan's involvement in so-called terrorist activities in the occupied valley, of course, in terms of the just struggle of the people of Kashmir. What's, of course, very, very important is, of course, Pakistan's own stance on the matter and the many dossiers that we are putting forward with regards to state-sponsored terrorism coming in from India and its top brass, both political and military. And so we're going to be taking a look at what sort of approaches need to be taken in that regard from within Pakistan in terms of this particular issue, and how at the international community at large can this particular issue be put forward even more and resolved. So we're going to be taking a look at that in our segment today, while, of course, we observe this very, very important day. For this and more, as always, in the studios, we've been joined by Senior Analyst Raja Faisal, and we've also been joined by Brigadier Retired Masud, Ahmed, who's a Senior Analyst. We've also been joined online by former Ambassador Mr. G.R. Baluch, and we will be joined on the telephone line by Syed Faiz Naqshbandi, who's Senior Leader, APHC Representative of Mirwaiz Umar Farooq. So that is going to be the focus of our discussion today in terms of how we're going to be moving forward. And Brigadier Masud, I'm going to start with you because we've been, of course, speaking about this particular day, this particular issue every day of our lives, and annually we, of course, observe the Solidarity Day on the 5th of February. But while we do that, I want your take in terms of how you've seen this evolve over the years, and how do you think can any ripples be created where we have seen that there seems to be no consequence for what is going on in the occupied valley. There seems to be no real attention paid to violations of UN Security Council resolutions, and that the suffering continues. So while we do this every year, what are we hoping to achieve and how we can do that differently?
Thank you, Sana. The basic aim of this celebrating the Solidarity Day of 5 February is to give a message to the people of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, at the same time to India as well. To the Kashmiris, we give this message to them that we understand and we feel their pain, the atrocities being committed by the Indian security forces in the occupied territories. At the same time, the human rights violation, the abuses, and the extrajudicial killing, all sort of things against those Kashmiris. So we understand. So the message is message of hope, and we stand next to them. Second, to the Indian authorities, the message is that the resolution of Kashmir is yet to be carried out on the basis of the United Nations resolutions of 1948, which calls for the demilitarization and subsequently going for a plebiscite. But unfortunately, that has not happened for the last 77 years now. But unfortunately, in the last 77 years, and recently we have seen what is actually happening inside illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is the Indians, they are now they are carrying out false flag operation. They are carrying out staged recoveries, staged encounters, human rights violations. Then they have the draconian laws as you referred, and then the actual leaders, they are behind the bar. Then they revoke the Article 370 and the 35A, and then they are trying to saffronize the entire region. So, but unfortunately, despite all this, all that is happening inside, generation after generation, the Kashmiris are giving the sacrifices, untold sacrifices, but the international community has turned a blind eye as far as the issue of Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. The resolutions of 1948 and subsequently they are still intact, which calls for the plebiscite. But unfortunately, if you compare the issue of Jammu and Kashmir with that of East Timor, so look at the way the United Nations was instrumental in going for a referendum and asking and telling the Indonesians as well as the Portuguese to leave the country and allow the residents of East Timor they should go for a referendum, and accordingly they have been given the independence. And similarly in case of South Sudan. So the crux is the international community, unfortunately, and the United Nations, they have the double standards. They go as for their geopolitical consequences or the interests, at the same time the economic interests. These are the basic factors. But overall, when we say the peace and stability in South Asia is linked with that of Jammu and Kashmir issue. If it is not addressed, then it is certainly a flashpoint and for the nuclear powers in the region.
Right, absolutely. And this is important in terms of how we want to move forward. Ambassador Saab, I want your take on this as well, because while we take a look at bodies such as the UN or the international community or particular countries such as the US or others, it's important, of course, to understand whether the understanding in itself of this core issue is present and whether Pakistan is actually approaching the issue in its right way, in which it has the effect that we want to. And while we, of course, extend this support and while we talk about this in terms of dossiers and other platforms where this issue is raised, what do you think can possibly be done in making sure that this is not forgotten, making sure that this is something that doesn't just die down in rhetoric, which seemingly it has over the past decades?
I think Kashmir issue is a very important chapter of the post Second World War decolonization, which was carried out in the globe and the global order. But this is one distortion, this is unfinished agenda that has stayed on in the subcontinent and in fact resulting unfortunately into 3 bloody wars between Pakistan and India, the two parties, two countries, the third party which is Kashmiri. Unfortunately, what happens is that this is more of philosophical, what I'm saying, and historical context, but the dimension of the Kashmir issue, but that's very important. Kashmir is just not a piece of land. Of course, it has its geopolitical, geographical importance in the region, but it is about the Kashmiri people also. It's about their Kashmiriyat, about their identity, and it is their historical claim to that region where they live. They have their separate language, culture, and of course they are bound with Pakistan with the ideology of Islam, and this is what is at stake in the first place, because I always say that it's the people who are supposed to be at the center of any conflict. That being the case, in my view, the Kashmiris are supposed to be at the center of this conflict, and this is where the world forgets. This is where some of our even advocates, they forget about it and turn it into a geopolitical, geo-economic. Yes, it has that dimension, no doubt about it, but what about the people? It's the people who are asserting their right to self-determination. It is people who are Kashmiris who are fighting and giving their precious life, though youth, they're dying for what? Yes, of course, their geography is dear to them, but with that geography is linked their identity, their tashakhus, their the Kashmirian. They want to live as a people because that is what they have been living for the last several thousands of years in that valley, that beautiful valley, which has been turned into hell for them. And how it has been done, that we all know it. And then, of course, there is an international dimension to that, and there's a regional dimension to Kashmir issue, international in the sense that we know that how Kashmir is situated between three nuclear powers, China, Pakistan and India. And most of all, Pakistan's water security depends on Kashmir, and this is where it actually takes the salience, what is called geoeconomic salience for Pakistan as well as for India. India obviously wants this leverage in its hand so that it can browbeat Pakistan, it can leverage it whenever it wants to, because after all, it is a typical behavior of a hegemon. What hegemon they do? What is happening in Gaza? I mean, people, probably some of them may not agree in comparing the two, but they are very, very clear. It is the same, it is the Palestinians who are fighting for their identity on a certain piece of land. And here the Kashmiris, they're fighting for their identity and their legitimate political rights on that piece of land which has been theirs for the last thousands of years and their forefathers. And they know, and there is a hegemon, there is Israel, and here is India. They want to deprive those very indigenous people who have been living there, whose forefathers have lived and died there. They were deprived of of that very land and that beautiful places that they inherited from the history. So I think we have to look at the regional dynamics, the international aspect, and the historical and culture. We need to be always asserting whenever we observe, I don't say celebrate, we observe our solidarity with the Kashmiris on the 5th of February every year. And most importantly, I think it's a message for our future generations so that they don't forget that this is a historical responsibility on them to be protecting their rights, so that the world does not forget that the world has an obligation under 18 Security Council resolutions, and most important being resolution 47 of 1948, April 1948, where it was very clearly mentioned that they'll be given the right of self-determination through a plebiscite. But then,
right, but Ambassador Saab, what I want to understand at the end of the day is that when we talk about those 18 Security Council resolutions or obligations, what obligations stand if somebody can violate it without consequence? What use is that obligation?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that is, unfortunately, we live in a world which has two systems, double standards, where there is the justices for the might. Nonetheless, always there have been, historically speaking, there will always been a fight between the morality, the right, and the wrong. Say the might does not make wrong right. So I think the legality of Kashmir, the legitimate rights of the people, of course, for the time being, we say that they have been suppressed, but at least the people who support their legitimate cause, Pakistan and other members of the international community, including the Muslim Ummah, they need to reassert every time. And not only that, this generation, but it must be passed on to the next generation so that they don't forget it. The moment we forget Kashmir, believe me, we'll forget the reason and the cause as to why Pakistan was created. I don't think it will be in our, ideologically correct, it will be morally correct, or legally correct to forget Kashmir. And we would not, I'm pretty sure, I can tell you, even today, I always, I'm kind of a volunteer with some organizations who work in the rural of Sindh. In a remote village, I just got the pictures, remote village, a primary school children, they were celebrating Kashmir issue in Sindh. So I think that also kind of connects our people together, that there's a cause for which we all stand as a nation. Yeah, Sana.
Right, absolutely. And that is very, very integral in terms of how we want to take this forward with our generations. Let me also welcome in the debate Syed Faiz Naqshbandi, who has just joined us on telephone 9. Thank you very much, Naqshbandi Saab, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. And you have, of course, representing a very important struggle, and the APHC has been very, very vital and integral in this struggle. But I want your take also in terms of how you actually see that struggle over the years and how you keep that resolve and that morale going despite the odds, despite what we've seen over the many years happen, and with so much impunity. And I want your take on then what gives you hope as you continue it, what avenues and doors and approaches you think are still possible where there can be some change and where you see that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you. There is a couple of questions on your part. First of all, I will mention that the people of the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir are struggling for their birthright, which is the right to self-determination. You see, on the dispute, like there is a dispute between two parties and court declares the verdict. In the same way, on Jammu and Kashmir, the world's highest body, it is the United Nations, they passed the resolution for final disposition of the Jammu and Kashmir to a UN-supervised plebiscite to see the expression of the people of the Jammu and Kashmir. And the beauty of the UN resolution is that the most important two resolutions, it were accepted by India as well as by Pakistan, making these resolutions as international agreements of the by force, besides being the UN. The people of the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir want the implementation of UN resolution in the letter and spirit. But sadly, our homeland has been occupied by force and fraud, which continues up till now by more than 900,000 Indian troops have been stationed, making it the highest army concentration anywhere in the world. Not only the Indian forces are indulged in the human rights violation, but it is a threat to the regional peace and stability. It is a threat to the climate. Huge army buildup. It's a threat to the climate. You see, the human rights violations are so massive, so systematic, that the government of India has framed a series of black laws that gives unlimited power to its armed forces to indulge in the human rights violation with the protection and the prosecution. It's called the impunity. If you will see Section 7 of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, no suit can lie against any Indian soldier in any court of law. This situation has drastically increased the human rights violation when there is no accountability. Identity of a witness can remain in...
Right, absolutely. And that is very, very important and integral to the discussion as well. But Naqshbandi Sahab, if you can also elaborate on what then can we possibly do in order to change that?
You see, there are two parties, the government of Pakistan as well as the Kashmir. Kashmiris, they are continuously struggling, making appeals to the entire world, especially to the UN Secretary General, reminding him for its promises, pledges to the people of Kashmir. And so far as the government is concerned, the government, the people of the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir are thankful to the people as well as to the government of the Pakistan for their political, moral and diplomatic support. But there are massive human rights violations in India.
Right, absolutely. And I completely understand that. Thank you. Thank you very much, Faiz Naqshbandi Sahab, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. Faisal, I want your take on these two factors that have been highlighted by Naqshbandi Sahab as well in our overall discussion with reference to Pakistan's role in this. While, of course, these approaches have been exercised previously as well, and there's a lot that Pakistan continues to do. So there's also, of course, what we discussed just yesterday in terms of the kind of baseless allegations coming in from within India. And while that, of course, have been denied and refuted, and we've seen that the Core Commanders Conference just yesterday also highlighted the same with the Chief of Army Staff, what exactly then is the way that this is viewed internationally, or how it is used internationally as well, whether it's in terms of how the countries interact with India or with Pakistan. And I want your take on whether or not Pakistan's stance then is significant in terms of highlighting the state-sponsored terrorism coming in from India in light of these baseless allegations.
Yes, and obviously when we talk about Pakistan's action and Pakistan's way of how Pakistan can proceed in this context, of course we know that Pakistan has a long-standing stand with people of Kashmir, and we have always stood with the people of Kashmir. Reason being, it's not only Pakistanis who consider Kashmir to be the pivotal part of Pakistan, a jugular vein as we always consider it, but it's also the Kashmiris themselves. If we take the example of marhum Syed Ali Gilani, he proudly used to say that hum Pakistani hai, Pakistan hamara hai. We are Pakistanis and Pakistan belongs to us. And this is what Pakistan says. Nobody can ever deny the relations that Pakistan is having with Kashmir, and them relations, they don't date back to 1947, they date back to even before the I must say before the British came here, or even before the Muslims came here. They are long standing. Whenever it is about Kashmir, of course it is considered about Pakistan as well. Pakistan has fought wars against India for Kashmir, and since 1947 Pakistan has been standing with Kashmir and still is standing with Kashmir. And when it comes to, of course, half of the Kashmir that is considered as the free AJK, as it has been always referred to as Azad Jammu and Kashmir, it is the freed part of Jammu and Kashmir, which is obviously having a free government, having its own constitution, having its own legislature, assembly as well, that defines its laws and rules and laws, and the world recognizes it, and the world recognizes the freedom which is being exercised in there. When we talk about Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, we know that India at the time of abrogation of 370 and 35A took the unilateral decision which it was not supposed to take, which it went against the obviously resolutions of United Nations. When we talk about the resolutions of United Nations, it clearly tells us that the plebiscite is the only way forward for this bone of contention that is in between the both of the nations. I mean, India and Pakistan, they are equipped with the nukes, and when it comes to making unilateral decisions, it is like considering itself as a hegemon, considering itself as a rogue element in the conflict. And of course we know that the kind of stance which India is adopting right now, the kind of military presence it is having in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, time and again it gets highlighted not only by Pakistan but throughout the world. It is considered as the most militarized zone in the world, and the only reason behind it is that they know that people of Kashmir, they stand with Pakistan and they want to join Pakistan, but the only way they can be stopped is by considering it or terming it into obviously the most militarized zone in the world. And the kind of course media blockages which we are seeing from Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, world knows it, world highlights it, and of course Pakistan has time and again highlighted at the United Nations General Assemblies, at any provided forum of European countries like European Union, and we know that it has been time and again highlighted with the facts that Pakistan is standing with people of Kashmir, but when it comes to the allegation that keep on getting hurled by obviously from the Indian side, they keep on throwing it towards Pakistan, that Pakistan is the one that is actually tunneling the Mujahideen into Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Like couple of weeks ago, Chief of the Army Staff of Indian rogue military, obviously he came up with this this allegation that Pakistan is obviously tunneling, and 60% of the ones who are carrying out all of these activities in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, they are Pakistanis. I would say all of them are Pakistanis. Why I say? Because when we obviously hear the voice coming from Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, they proudly say that they are Kashmiris and Pakistanis at the same time. So whoever is involved in freedom struggle in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, all of them, they are Kashmiris and Pakistanis at the same time. But when it comes to Pakistan's role, Pakistan has been clear about it. Pakistan is playing its role morally, standing with people of Kashmir, standing with people of Jammu, as we are hearing the latest reports which are coming from Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. We know that they have been, of course, utilizing the odd means, very odd means of obviously using biological weapons in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. We shouldn't be forgetting that the Hindutva ideology is following the footsteps of Zionism. As we saw, the Zionists, they were using pellet guns, then later on in Kashmir, the pellet guns were used. When they started using the phosphorus bombs, we know that the same kind of weapons, they started getting used in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir as well. And now when we were seeing that they have been using biological weapons in Palestine, now they have started doing it in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. In a very recent case, they have been contaminating the water with obviously the poisons, because they want to disturb the demographics of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. They want to deter the people of Kashmir to run away from Kashmir so that they can place their own people in there, and eventually they can show it to the world. Here we are with a fresh assembly, and in that their own assembly, their own kind of assembly, they will show that the majority of the people, they are not Muslims anymore, they are actually the Hindutva ideology sort of followers. And of course it has nothing to do with the Kashmiris wanting to go with Pakistan, and the plebiscite once, if when their designs about the demographic changes, they are applied and fully in function, that's when they'll go for it. I think Pakistan needs to keep on carry on highlighting these aspects and further down
absolutely
the whole world.
Understand what you're saying, Faisal, and that is extremely important. But Brigadier Masud, I want your take on this too, because while all of these atrocities are taking place, as Faisal has been pointing out, these are of course serious things happening to people in the occupied valley for quite some time now. And I want your take then in terms of the options available to the people of Kashmir, to Pakistan, and to countries with any sort of a humanitarian aspect in terms of what's happening. Because while we talk about how UN is redundant in this regard, how we talk about that the Security Council resolutions are being violated and that there is no consequence, even the unilateral actions of 2019 were done 6 years ago. So I want your take in terms of the options available and the approaches that can be taken in such a scenario where there is an occupying force, occupying people who are not being given their just right to self-determination.
As far as options are concerned, first when we talk of the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, certainly they will continue with their struggle for their freedom, right for self-determination. And now we have seen basically what to talk of valley. Now the struggle has spread into the south, that is south of Pir Panjal range, and we have seen the activities of Mujahideens in the south of Pir Panjal, mainly in the Punch area, Rajori area, Doda, Kishtawar, even closer to border and Kathua areas. So and there is a fear among the Indian security forces as far as these the emergence of new groups in south of Pir Panjal. So that has created a factor of demoralizing Indian security forces in those areas. As far as option for Pakistan is concerned, then we need to go with more proactive approach. Especially we can send our envoys to the important capitals to the west, and we can plead our case, and we can tell them the atrocities, the ethnic cleansing, demographic imbalance, the Indians which are creating in the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. That is one thing. Second, we can take the case to the International Criminal Court, International Court of Justice, about the atrocities, human rights violation, draconian laws within the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. At the same time, we can add one other thing, that the killing of Kashmiris inside Pakistan, 22 Kashmiris, they were assassinated. The reports were carried by Guardian as well as by the New York Times. So they also acknowledged and confessed by Amit Shah and others that we were the one we carried out this assassination inside Pakistan. So we can take a case and we can submit another dossier of Indian involvement in this assassination inside Pakistan. And at the same time, we can also take on board the important organizations like OIC, the European Union, the Organization of African Union, and also the ASEAN, and certainly countries like Turkey and Saudi Arab can play an important role. China, Russia, they are already probably there on board. So we need to go for a proactive approach to plea and present our case to international community. So at the same time, with this United Nations can be asked to send a team to investigate the atrocities in the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, specific areas, as Raja Sahab was mentioning about the contamination of areas in the wells and the ponds in the south of Pir Panjal range. So it is done by design to create a situation of fear among the locals, at the same time to create demographic imbalance in the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So as a whole Pakistan, we should continue with our efforts to highlight and raise the issue of Jammu and Kashmir across the globe at all forums. That is important, and we can celebrate this it should not be specific to one day, that is 5 February. It could be on weekly basis, monthly basis, and our Kashmir committee should be more active to carry out such awareness campaigns and atrocities being committed by Indian occupation forces in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir.
Right, absolutely. Basir Saab, there is also, of course, the importance of the voice of the people. When we talk about the international community, we've seen that many struggles have been able to put pressure on their governments and people around the world to make certain decisions. And I want your take on whether that approach is being seriously taken, where we're targeting the people and helping them understand all over the world, particularly also people within India, in terms of voices against their own state, against their government. And we have some very brave voices that are coming out, given, of course, Modi's regime and the kind of exercises that they carry out against any such dissenting notes. But I want your take on how important these voices are and how substantial they are for this just struggle.
Yeah, I think I've been always advocating that definitely that the humanity has not evaporated from the entire Indian society. I hope so, not so far. And I believe my studies and my analysis suggests that there's still a critical mass of people who believe in humanitarian values, who believe in the democratic values, who believe in the international recognized civilized values. And all that behavior of this BJP government, which is obviously, we all know that is a Hindutva motivated ideology which they promote and project, and all their policies are tinged in that ideology. So they definitely are against that, and in fact we have several such thinkers, critical thinkers, analysts from India who do condemn the humanitarian violation of humanitarian rights of the Kashmiris. the extrajudicial killings, especially now. The latest development is the extrajudicial killing of Kashmiris and Sikhs and other people who do not agree with the suppressive policies of BJP government. So I think we need to really continue to touch that critical mass. Somehow or the other, our civil society should establish some kind of a communication with that critical mass, because they can mutually reinforce each other. And of course, the Kashmiri diaspora is very, very critical, in my view, for keeping the struggle of Kashmiris alive, and especially keeping the international community alive. They have a very strong community in Britain. They have Kashmiri's diaspora is in Europe, even in America. So I think we need to really coordinate, cooperate our civil society. Of course, government is doing its own official work, but the civil society in Pakistan and the diaspora and the civil society in Kashmir, Indian occupied Kashmir, should somehow or the other work out a what's called the narrative strategy, because this is the era of war of narratives. So as long as the narrative is understood, it is like owned by the international community, I think that will be a very big qualitative change in terms of our diplomatic effort, in our political effort, and our legal effort as well. Because this is another very important thing I want to really highlight here, that our lawyers should come up. The lawyers of international law should come up. I was just looking at the resolutions. I mean, there are series of resolutions which have been passed by the international by the UN. The resolution 98 of 1951, and then 122 of 57. They completely reject Indian attempts to change the status of Indian occupied Kashmir. They rejected that and also that there is no other method but plebiscite through which the people have to be given this right. So even their attempt to carry out these sham elections in Kashmir, they have been rejected through these UN Security Council resolution. So I think we need to also activate our struggle, or the Kashmiris need to also activate their struggle on international law forums all over the world, and take these legal points and tell and inform that how these steps, especially 370 and 350, the abrogation of the 370 and 35A by India, is not only against humanitarian laws, but it is against the UN resolutions. So I think this is where we have to take a legal recourse, we have to take media and narrative war, and obviously the diplomatic war we already are continuing, Pakistan as a state in the UN and other forums. Yes, Sana.
Right, absolutely. Faisal, I want your concluding message on this very important day when we talk about the Kashmir Solidarity Day, and especially what next? Are we going to sit here next year and talk about the same issues?
Not at all, Sana. Obviously, we should highlight it everywhere that we are already doing, but at the same time, there needs to be adequate pressure that should be considered as a diplomatic pressure that should be applied, and it should be obviously highlighted again and again in this context that this man who's ruling over India today, he's the very man who's been once called Butcher of Gujarat, and as long as he's the one who's actually controlling over all of the powerful buttons in today's India, the region is not safe at all. We have to highlight it again and again that Pakistan and India, when they are having this bone of contention, Kashmir, which needs to be resolved in accordance to the demands of the people of Kashmir, then if this is not resolved, it should always be considered as a flashpoint, a nuclear flashpoint, and it should be given the priority. And especially the saner world of the West, the saner world of the Europe, they need to be, of course, on board as well. And in today's world, there are, of course, the modern ways to apply pressure on countries like these, countries like India, countries like Israel. So them pressures must be applied, and next year when we are sitting here talking about it, we should be discussing the progress of the year, how it proceeded, and what can be obviously made better in the coming years.
Right, thank you very much, Faisal, for that, and thank you very much to all our guests, including Syed Faiz Naqshbandi, who joined us earlier, Ambassador G.R. Baluch, and Brigadier Masud Ahmed Saab, of course, with reference to this very important day. We're all together in the spirit when we say we stand in solidarity with the people of Kashmir, but there's so much more that needs to be done, not just with words, but also with action, and we hope that that is something that not just the people and the country realizes, but also the entire world understands as we move forward, that there are people who have been suffering for many generations, and that needs to end now. That's all that we have from the debate today. We'll now see you tomorrow.